Okay. So, hello everybody. My name is Simon. Currently, I'm a student, just like I think everybody else here, in economics. I'm doing my master's at California State University in financial economics. And Lewis was so kind to invite me to just give a quick talk about my background and what I've learned through, my educational and career experience. And we take the same class, which was macroeconomics. So I think a lot of topics today that are going to cover pertaining maybe if you're finishing your school or you're about to start your job or you don't even actually know what you're going to do. So whatever walk of life you're at, I think what I want you to take from this, you could say presentation is just one thing that can help you maybe make the next best decision in your career choice. So I usually like to start with a quote that kind of describes me. And the quote is, "We choose to do things not because they are easy, but because they are hard." So I like to go by this quote because if you want to succeed in life, it probably is not going to be easy, it's going to be hard. So as soon as you accept that you're going to have to take steps that are not going to be easy, but keep in mind that as many steps as you take along the road, each additional one is going to be a little bit easier with keeping in mind that you have eye on the prize or eye on the goal. So I'll go kind of walk you through my backstory, how I came to the United States and how I actually got to Amazon. So I'm originally from Slovenia, from a city that's as big as Pasadena. If anybody lives around Los Angeles, has very not large. Pretty much across Slovenia, you could drive in about 3 or 4 hours. So a very small country in the European Union. Um, After I finished high school, I got accepted to law school, but I really didn't know if I want to do that. So I took an opportunity that presented itself and I transferred to Cal State LA. Another interesting story that I would like to point out because we're all here at Cal State LA, and I think it resonates with students, is that I also applied to two very good schools, one of them being USC and the other one being UCLA. And UCLA, I did not, um, you know, make it to the top or upper echelon of, student academia. As an international student, I wasn't given priority. And then literally my math score, even though it was 720 SAT, still was not able to get me to UCLA. And with USC, I had a conditional acceptance, which meant that I would have to take some, additional English classes, and everything would be delayed for another year or two. So um, my motto was, I came to the United States to study economics. Let me go to Cal State LA, and that's why I decided. And you could say, well, the other two schools, or maybe USC, maybe you would get a better ROI. But keep in mind that even a lot of students today, they pick state schools because the private schools are getting very, very expensive. And you probably learned that if you're studying economics through, inflation or the supply side. So that was my choice. And I chose a degree in finance, and I also minored in economics. Um, After that, when I graduated, I think I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But I definitely had in mind to also attend um, my master's. So I did want to, continue my learning path. I think it's quite an accomplishment for anybody that get their master's degree. I think we all know here that if anybody is in grad school, it's very daunting. It's completely different than college. So if anybody's not yet in grad school, I'll definitely encourage them to do so, preferably at Cal State LA. I took my undergrad at Cal State. I took my grad at Cal State. I liked what I got, and that's why I chose to, just continue it at the same school. Another thing that I would like to also point out during our discussion is that now today, and especially during COVID, you see that a lot of our lives is guided by technology. And one of my personal goals is also to learn more about machine learning. Once you dive into this, technology or this concept that's literally guiding the top companies in this world, one of them being like Tesla, the other one being Amazon, where I work at. It's quite daunting that these companies operate with such success, yet we do not know how they operate, right? If you ask somebody today, well, how does Elon Musk get their car to drive by itself? Well, it's machine learning, right? Whether if we look at 20, 30 years back, we all knew that, some basic tools that we use every day, even a car, you can pretty much understand that you need an engine, you need gas, and pretty much you don't have to be an expert, but you might attempt to be. But I think when it comes to this machine learning slash AI, we're all in the dark. So my personal goal is to learn more about this. Another thing that comes to mind is that once you finish school, you're always going to have to self-educate yourself. And the reason why I say that is because I saw a stat the other day, and that today, in 1 year, we record more data than we ever recorded in history of life before the year 2000. So, of course, then when you're trying to keep along with trends, if you're trying to do some work, if you're trying to do even some analysis, it's almost impossible to do it on a piece of paper, let alone in Excel or something else, right? And the last part that I would like to emphasize here is that whatever you decide to do, ask for some advice. If you could do everything yourself, then you would not need anybody else in your life, right? But that's not the case. So I think having a mentor or even becoming a mentor, kind of like what I'm doing today, it can have profound effect on your outcome. And that means that if you lend a helping hand or you give some advice, usually my motto is that you will also receive good advice from other people. And I think today, especially because we live in the world of COVID, keep in mind, I wrote this before COVID started, is that networking is crucial. Today, we can't, well, at least not until further notice, but you can't essentially meet people in social gatherings. So you do have to network, right? And how you network is pretty much very crucial for part of your success. Um, and you might ask, well, Simon, why did you do your grad in econ, right? When you already have this excellent job in Amazon. So um, this is something from my back home, and the reason I pulled it up, these are on the left-hand side. You see banknotes from Yugoslavia. This is circa 1988, before hyperinflation happened. And on the right-hand side, in the middle, we actually have Nikola Tesla on the note, on $10 billion note, when hyperinflation happened. So when I was a little kid, when I saw this happening and I didn't understand it, I always had a passion to understand the world of monetary economics, which we're learning, at least me and Luis are learning them today in class. Of course, there's very many variables that you need to account for, but at least from a little kid, I was interested in why these things are happening. Um, so just as an interesting, picture that I wanted to bring up, this essentially started as when I was 3, 4 years old, and it carried even to today that I'm very interested in the monetary economics, and that's what actually I study as well. Um, so if I go back to my work progression, just kind of a broad overview is that out of college, I started working at a small company. After I got some experience, especially experience not only with people working in an official or like a actual workplace, also gaining some hard and soft skills. I was able to then making it from the small business, joining a bigger business, where I was an analyst at CIT, which is a bank. And there, I grew a little bit more, took a little bit harder steps, and eventually learned as much that I was actually confident after 7 years of having some career experience to apply to Amazon. And I'll go further that along the slides. So the first position when I got out of college, just like everybody, I just wanted to start working somewhere. Um, it was very hard. Um, Even when I was looking at my peers in 2012, and this were remnants of, the last uh, Great Recession in 2008. We all graduated with the same degrees, but I didn't see any of my peers getting really good jobs. So I know that even if myself try to go into a bigger corporation, probably those jobs are hard to attain. um, I didn't know whether the supply is limited or the demand is so great. But it was also a very interesting problem that I wanted to understand is why can't I, when I invested 4 years of my time, cannot get a job that I want? And pretty much that's everybody's or majority of us problem in life. And even though you get a job, you want to do a job that you like, that you love, right? Um, in the economics club, we're all studying economics, but just as a reference, even if I wanted to be an economist at Amazon, I would have to have a PhD in economics, right? Just because the bar is so high. So of course, this was fine. I learned some very simple, manual processes using Excel, doing very repetitive tasks. And then once I grow, as the business grew, I started seeing a lot of problems with the data gathering, a lot of problems with repetitive work, constant mistakes, accounting issues, uh, day-to-day issues, work schedules, all these different things. And we're still relying on Excel. And I was like, there has to be a better way to do this. So maybe after a couple of years out of my degree, I said, I want to better myself. I want to understand, how can I make these processes better? And I was doing a lot of research, and what I stumbled upon was something called VBA, which some of you might be familiar with. And then I also started experimenting something because I was doing a lot of my work in Excel with something that was called MS Access, which uses also SQL as the backend language to process all the data requests. And I saw that you can actually pretty much build a database with hundreds and thousands of rows and extract them with a split of a second. And when I saw that, started doing some further, digging, and I saw that if I really wanted to do a good job or penetrate more into the corporate world at the big companies, to gain more experience, more exposure, that's something that I would have to do. It was just a necessity. So it was a very hard process. It takes a lot of time to learn. And then eventually, I made the decision that I would go forward and try to attain a better job, to gain me more knowledge, more exposure. Taking harder steps. So I applied with CIT, where I will tell you, um, I was interviewed really hard, and I think like everybody else, probably you think you failed the interview just because it's so hard. But I think what I've learned throughout the process is that your employer wants to make sure that you're comfortable under pressure and that you should speak your mind, even though they throw you trick questions, right? Um, but as long as you have a solid base and you're confident in yourself, I think your work will then speak for itself. So I was able to pass that interview. Of course, it came with a SQL interview, and you'll notice that SQL is like kind of it will be the trend of how I got to Amazon. But it's funny that it's one of the most today required programming languages. Somebody would say it's not programming. I would say it could be used as a gateway to programming. It gives you some solid foundational skills. But essentially, this skill carried me not only through CIT, but also through other job applications. So if you think about it, it went from small business to CIT Group, which is a bank with about 50 billion in deposits, top 40 bank in the United States. But then once I dig even deeper, start learning, different platforms, different type of analytics, dashboarding, statistical analysis, which here is mentioned, I think, in Tableau. There's also other platforms like SAP, where you can really do a lot of things and automate your work so you can spend more time on insights and trends. And eventually, when I did this for 2 years at CIT Group, I saw that the demand that I could get from other companies was pretty much in abundance. And what this means is that I applied to pretty good companies like Deloitte, US Bank, and I was actually able to get to high level interviews with offers. And eventually, I also took a chance because if you asked me maybe 5 years ago, would you even have the guts, pardon my French, to apply to Amazon? I'm like, no, no chance. I don't, not in a million years, right? But because I did so much work to prepare, to actually put in a lot of work at CIT, um, I had the confidence to then apply there too. And one of the interesting decisions that I had to make is I had really good offers from Deloitte and US Bank, and I turned them down. And the reason why I turned them down is because I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to go full on interview the whole way through Amazon. And the reason I turned them down is because I had two offers and they wanted an answer within 24 hours or 48 hours, something along those lines. But I had this second stage of the Amazon interview process where, if I accept that, then I would never know, hey, could I actually make it to Amazon or, other companies like Facebook, Google. So I said no to those and I took a chance in this on Amazon. And the process was very rigorous. Um, Pretty much, you get interviewed at your final interview for 6 hours. You get a coding interview, you get a data modeling interview, and this is specific for tech employees. So I am considered a tech employee. My actual title is business intelligence engineer, and it's a little bit more glorified term, but essentially we're analysts. We bridge the gap between the business side, so like business leaders, directors, people that negotiate vendor deals with big companies like Procter and Gamble, Johnson and Johnson, and the software engineers, the data engineers, right? So we extract data, make sense of it, scale, we say something like size the problem or scale the problem, see if we did X and we did Y, what would be the outcome? And that's essentially what a BIE does. What I specifically do is pricing, which before I applied at Amazon, I didn't even know I'm going to do pricing. I kind of knew from conversation with my manager that it would be something in regards to analytics with pricing, but not really that I could have a say into, hey, let's do an analysis if we gave a discount to X amount of customers, how many additional customers would we get, which we all know is the concept of elasticity, right? And that actually, when I realized that, I just fell in love with the job, you could say. A lot of questions that I get also is, do you work a lot? Yes, but I love what I do. And I think if you definitely take some time into, like, today, especially in the workforce, what I see is that a lot of data analysts or economists, they need some programming language. And I'll say, where we're in school, we have Stata, we have what's like MATLAB and all these nice programs, but once you come, for example, if you start your own business or you want to do some own analysis, let's say some stock analysis, maybe dive a little bit into blockchain, crypto, you're going to have to do all these things yourself. We can't afford to buy SPSS or Stata to do econometric analysis, right? So R is the best way to go. And I think R is even taught in some of our classes today in economics. So to highlight, essentially, the hard skills did get me to this point. But I would definitely like to emphasize that networking, meaning seeing what other people are doing, how they did it, what did they learn, what were their successes and failures, that helped me a lot too. And I had a mentor which guided me through this process, kind of showing me the ropes of how to succeed in the corporate world. Make sure that you take on projects that you might not ever get benefit for. That happens a lot. You work on a project with your passion, but the work is just swept underneath of you, right? That's okay, because you need to win some, and you lose some. And what I mean by that is that every work that you do, it might not have an outcome that you want, but just at least as you take something positive and learn something from it, you're going to actually contribute to your success in life and in your career. So, just something to highlight at the very end today. As mentioned, the next step that it's my goal, and it pretty much is becoming a very commonality, is machine learning. I've started diving into it, but I really want to. I think that's where the industry is going to go to, and for that, you need some even harder skills than R. You need some programming language skills like Java or even Python. So that is my foresight, and I'm now going to hand it off to you if you have any questions, comments. But the model that I work for today is work hard, have fun, and make history. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. I do actually have a question. So I was wondering if when do you feel like there was a opportunity cost when you were
Yeah,
choosing different schools?
good point. I told my wife this. She's right now at USC as getting her degree in social work. And like 3 months before she's about to finish, she's like, Simon, I saw how much social workers get paid, but my degree is over 100,000. And I was like, yeah, well, you should have made that research before you went to USC instead of going to Cal State like I did, right? And that you're right, that there's definitely opportunity cost. What I've heard even better is, even you hear some very very known leaders like Elon Musk. Hey, you don't even need a degree. Just learn how to code, and Tesla will hire you. You're gonna get a six-figure job. So I would say, let's forget about the actual cost, the value cost. Uh, Going to college, I think it's still a good pinnacle or a very good pillar in our society. You meet a lot of people, you socialize. I met my wife actually at Cal State LA, and we've been together now for over 10 years. So not every apologies. So not everything um, can be somehow quantified, right? Because how much is it, how valuable it is that I met somebody that can support me throughout my life when I'm down, when I'm up, share with somebody, right?
Yeah,
But if we're looking at from an economic perspective, I said I'd rather I'll go to a school, learn as much as I can, even if a book has 500 pages, the professor can only cover 250. Let me do the research on additional 250, right?
yeah,
And that's what you can do. On the other hand, a school provides you a good networking platform, which I think today with social media and everything, you can pretty much reach anybody at any point in time at almost zero cost. And I would say that opportunity cost has definitely shifted, you could say, right?
yeah,
So that would be my 2 cents on the opportunity cost. It depends on the situation, right? If you're good in math, I've seen some students, straight out of high school, first, second year in college, they already know what they're gonna do. I want to be a software developer. And then for some students, they really don't know what they want to do, right? So for
yeah,
those students, I would say talk as much as you can to your peers and find what you like doing, right? It might sometimes it might not be very conventional. But like me, it took me what, 8, 7 years to figure out what I want to do. And eventually you'll find something that's going to give you that reward, even though it's going to cost a little bit more.
yeah. We have a question from Alice. Do you have any other tips or resources that you think would be very helpful for students that want to set themselves apart when it comes to job searching?
From my experiences, Amazon has about, I think, let me check, 1.2 million employees worldwide. So I think by studying your competitors, your fellow students, is the best way to go. What I did when I, joined, when I was looking at CIT, which was my first like big corporate job, I looked at everybody at the company, like where's this person from? What did this person do, right? And LinkedIn enabled me that. Before maybe 20, 30 years, this was not possible. And the other thing is that when you do the job hunt, curtail your resume specific to the position. I've had the privilege of being a part of the Amazon hiring process. So I see how, what applicants do. And I've seen some resumes that are 13 pages, some resumes that are half a page. And just make sure to curtail your job, your experiences relevant to the position. The other thing is really depending on the position. I would say two job families, tech and non-tech. Non-tech would say leans more on leadership, that you can be your own person, right? The tech side leans more on hard skills, coding, like R, SQL, um, Python, even C++ if you want some really hard programming knowledge. And just be good at one, right? The other ones will follow. I usually give an analysis like learn one programming language and you're going to understand them all. It's like a bike. Learn how to ride the bicycle. Now you get a pony or you get like a tricycle. It's gonna be a little bit uncomfortable, but you're gonna get to the end point, right? It might be a little bit rough at the beginning, but you're gonna get a much better start than somebody else. So hard skills, soft skills, and then the third thing, try to network, right? I've seen some really good people out there that when they just start networking over LinkedIn, or they see something that differentiates you from other applicants, like volunteering, like doing some sports events, right? Don't hesitate to put that on your resume, right? As long as it's in the realm of professionality, right? Maybe you're the best marathon runner, and you can actually shows that you're passionate, that you're diligent, that you're disciplined. So something along those lines.
All right. And we also have a question from Alex. What kind of hurdles, if at all, have you encountered on your path, just on the basis of being a foreigner? And what would be your advice if you had them, how to overcome them?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I get a lot of these questions at Amazon. There's a lot of people outside the world that want to come to United States. So even though what we hear, there's a lot of people, there's still a lot of demand to come and work in the United States and get educated in the United States. As it is, I took a similar outsetting like this. I took it at Cal State Long Beach, and there were some students that actually want to go outside of the United States just to explore different worlds. But as a foreigner coming to United States, I would definitely say 10, 20 years ago, the most common question I got asked, where are you from? That was the number one question. Today, they actually know, majority of people that I talk to, they know where Slovenia is. They've been to the capital. They've been skiing at the mountains in Slovenia. And that just shows how today we're more of a globalized society, and people are much more comfortable with different walks of life, you could say, right? As a foreigner, I could say also, as I am, English will probably be a little bit of a struggle at the time, right? Even today, I still count in my native language, right? In my brain, I count. Is That's a funny thing, right? Because I think I asked my wife, "Do you dream in Spanish or in English?" And she said English, but she knew what I meant. Her field is in this, but I still count in Slovenian, so that's my downfall, right? But maybe not. I think just being comfortable with the language. You don't have to know the entire vocabulary. As long as you understand and you kind of organize your thoughts and have a clear message, I think that's much more important than anything else. I think the one message is more important than a large paragraph with an empty statements, right?
Yeah. And also, Alice adds, do you recommend any specific website or book to learn programming? And if you could like drop your LinkedIn on the chat.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So there's a couple ways to do it. You might be like me. You can just Google it uh, and pick up a course. I think one of the things that college is good for, it makes you come to class and do the work. I used to complain about having so much homework and having these quizzes, right, every week. But then I realized it's actually good because it keeps me on point. It keeps me with the flow of things. It makes sure that I do not slack off, that I do my work and I stay connected with the material. And that's how programming is. At the beginning, it's good that you take a course, let's say a boot camp or something like that, coding boot camp, and it can be, on Udemy, let's say udemy.com. I took a bunch of them because it shows you a very simple starter, right? A starter track shows you like this is how you used to do it in Excel. This is how you do it in programming, and you're like, now I understand, right? Um, another point is a lot of CIS majors, right? Computer information science, they get a crash course. They don't actually become full-blown programmers once they come out of college, at least to my knowledge, and this is generally speaking. But they don't know specifically like a language, right? They might take a course on SQL, but we all might know that you have to do a lot of practice that you actually can walk in a room and do free coding, right? So that would be number one, take a class, take a boot camp. It's going to be a very, very hard start. It's a steep learning curve, but everything is, right? Even when we learn how to ride a bicycle, you have to fall like at least 10 times, right? But you pick yourself up the 11th time, and you keep on going. So that's the mentality. It's just that here, Alicia, it's just would be that just don't stop. If you want, I can give you some resources, like you mentioned on LinkedIn. I took a bunch of courses because I have to take them also as a self-interest, self-educating. So I skim through a lot of them. Sometimes I take additional ones to refresh my memory. Um, and on the other hand, you can actually there's a lot of free resources. Depending how your brain works, if you're the type of person like I like to see how somebody solves the problem, and then I try to mimic that method on another problem. If you're like that, what you can do is go on HackerRank is one site. I'll leave the comment here. So give me 1 second. Let's see. Chat. Where's the chat, Lewis?
It should
Oh,
be like right in the
chat.
middle. Yeah.
Okay, I'll leave it at the end, just so. But my point I was trying to make is that there's websites where you can practice coding problems, and you learn like that. And the reason why I say that is because how you would structure a coding problem doing a statistical analysis is completely different than building a web app or a phone app, right? Phone app doesn't need to know any knowledge of statistics, right, and algebra. So you can actually choose by problems that are more how would you say, close to you, and that you could actually want to apply further in your life. That's a good way to go, because when you do these courses, what's going to happen, they're going to flood you with everything. They're going to literally overflow you with information. And usually what I'm afraid of when I have other students that I mentor is that they just give up hope. So it's good that somebody guides you. Hey, forget about that. It's useless, right? Or like some formulas, or like some derivative formulas that we learn one time, and then the next day after the test is over, we forget. Coding is similar like that, right? They overflow you with a bunch of junk that you don't need, right? And you can talk to me or talk to some peers that are experienced or know, and just ask him, hey, I'm in this field of study. I want to do this, this, and this, and then they can guide you. Oh yeah, you should look at that. You should look at our cram project, or you should look at NumPy, or something like that. So there's also within programming, there's statistical packages, or coding package. Let's just call them packages that have built-in functions that can automate a lot of your work. So for example, if you do a regression, you can just have a function, plug in your X, plug in your Y, and gives you everything, kind of like in Excel, right?
Yeah, yeah. One more question on my end is so like you were saying earlier that you kind of do there's going to be a time when you might like do a project or do something
Hmm.
that you might not exactly get credit for. And
Yeah,
how did that like impact you? Like I guess like an example would be like in the club we're trying to do like a Python project
hmm,
and like all those kind of like statistical programming
sure,
languages. And like I added like Python by myself like with like to my
yeah,
Chromebook.
hmm,
So like obviously no one's ever gonna see that, like no one's ever gonna do anything with it. But I added it. I started kind of like programming with it, and like
hmm.
I do see the benefit of it. But how would you say your experience was in that aspect?
Um, Definitely, if you do it yourself, i- i- one problem is gonna lead to another problem. At Amazon, I can tell you, we a lot of times we fix one problem, we think it's bringing a solution, and then the solution uncovers another problem. So there's something that you gotta watch for. It's called the black box, and that black box is just gonna lead you to never-ending problems. This condition, that condition. So eventually, what you're going to have to do is stop somewhere and make some assumptions, kind of like what we do in economics, right? We assume that this is going to be constant, nothing else will change. Let's just look at this, right? And the same thing is with your code. You're making some assumptions. You're making an assumption that all your columns are perfect, right? You're making an assumption that this function will work and will not eat up your memory, right? And and then let's just say you make all those assumptions. The problem that you do, even though you're never going to work with it, is just going to give you this, it's going to fill your memory with something that once you eventually one day might work on it or not, or maybe something similar, you're going to have the experience of saying, oh, I know I did this before, right? And that's how coding is. You're not going to know every single syntax, every single function, but it's just going to give you that confidence that you know how to solve the problem. You know the core issue, you know how to tackle it, and then you're going to fill out the branches and the leaves and the trees, right? As you go, and that's fine. Nobody expects you to know everything, but tackling a problem like you just said, Lewis, even if you don't solve the problem, just trying to stab at it is just good. That it just gives you that confidence that you will need, and that, let's say you walk into an interview, you're like, if I was able to do this, I can do anything, right? And that's how my mentality was. If I was able to learn myself, not being teach myself, not being a computer science major, a programming slash coding language, I'm good. I think I can do anything, right? So doing something that presents you a challenge, it's going to be very rewarding, even though you might not be okay with the outcome, right? The statistical
Yeah,
model is not going to be great. There's going to be a bunch of issues, but at least you tried and you knew what you need to work on once you have to go back at it, or if you actually get it, you have a job that expects you to do this.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't think we have any more questions. Uh, so yeah, I think thank you again for doing our guest speaker, and
Okay.
we will be posting this on our YouTube, which is still on in the works, but we also have a Python demo that
Hmm.
should be coming up too. So this will be up there too. So for those students that weren't able to watch, I'm gonna stop recording now. Um, let's see.